Fresh blueberries, just starting to ripen. This is the beginning of July, and in 2 weeks there's going to be so many that I can't pick them all. So what to do? I have a problem. My problem is I did not empty my freezer from last year's blueberries. And we have a new season coming on. Now when I freeze my blueberries, I measure them, the physical volume. There's a quart in each of these bags, and this is last year's blueberries. And the weight of the blueberries is about 1 1/3 pounds. Okay, and it's fairly consistent. You see here, 2.6, and that should come out to just about 4 pounds. So for each quart, or for each pound I should say, you want to add between 3/4 and 1 cup of sugar. So I'm going to stay on the lighter side and add 3/4 cup for each of these, well, for each pound. Hello my friends, I'm going to show you how to make blueberry jam. Okay, I'm using my last year's blueberries, and the reason I'm doing that is I have a surplus left over from the winter, and I have a new batch of blueberries coming on. So you can do this with fresh blueberries or the frozen. The recipe for blueberry jam is simple. 2 ingredients, blueberries and sugar. And I weighed my blueberries, but for every quart, a quart is 1 1/3 pounds. So for every pound, you add 3/4 cup to 1 cup of sugar. So I like to keep the sugar on the lighter side, so I'm adding 3/4 cup for each pound. So here I'm adding 3 cups for 4 pounds of berries. And pre-measured 3 cups. Put this on the heat and let it cook. Now these are frozen berries. It's going to take a while to bring the heat up to get them to start softening and cooking. So I'm going to stir these once they start to soften, and then I'm going to try to crush them. You can use a potato smasher to break them down, but these should break up pretty good just from heating them. Now I have the jars that I'm using preheating. They're being sterilized in my canner, and I'm also heating the lids in a separate container. And the reason I do that is a lot of times when I place my jars in the canner, I don't have enough liquid, and I'll pour the boiling water from the lids over top, and it won't change the temperature of the boiling water. My berries are thawed, and you can see they're starting to break down. At this point you can take a potato smasher and help break them up, or use an immersion plunger. At this point, all that we have to do is continue heating, and you have a few options here. Once you get it up to the boiling temperature, you could add fruit pectin, and all that you do is follow the ingredient measurement that would be given on the package. And if you use the pectin, you bring it up and boil it for 1 minute, and you're basically done. I don't want to use the fruit pectin. I am going to bring this up to temperature. Now, the temperature range is between 217 degrees and 222 degrees, and the temperature depends on your altitude where you live. I'm approximately 1,000 feet in elevation above sea level. At sea level, the temperature should be at 220 degrees. Pretty close to 8 degrees above the boiling temperature. So whatever the boiling temperature would be, just add 8 degrees. So mine, I'm going to take this up to 218 degrees. And when you go to use this, you can see steam starting to come up now, so we're not to boiling temperature. But when it starts to boil, you're going to have a lot of steam. You'll have trouble reading your thermometer. So get familiar with it before it starts steaming. Okay, so now since I'm using Fahrenheit, that will be this red. And you can see the measurements here. 250 degrees is here, 200 degrees is here. This dark line is 225. So I'm going to go right before, like 1 notch, which is about 5 degrees. I'll take it right up to that mark, and then this will be done. There's a couple old school methods. There's the spoon dripping, where you take a cold spoon, dip a batch out, hold it above the steam, maybe about 12 inches, and then you ladle it off. And when it comes and forms like a sheet, that's pretty much the temperature when you're done. Real old school is when you're stirring and the spoon dragging on the bottom. The sap or the juice forms like a valley to where you can see the bottom of the pot, and it takes about 1 second to 2 for it to close, and that is also the right temperature for the jelly. So this is just getting up to about boiling temperature, which should be about 212, so we'll put that in. You don't want the bottom of the thermometer touching the bottom of the pot. That'll give you a false reading. So have it elevated a little bit. Also, when you're taking the temperature, you do want to be stirring so that the temperature through the batch is at a uniform consistency. I'm using a pot that is larger in diameter rather than tall, and this gives me a larger surface area for the steam or water to evaporate and escape. And that's what we're trying to do. Just similar to making maple syrup, we want to evaporate moisture out so it leaves almost a syrupy consistency. This is going to be, the temperature will be under the temperature for syrup, but it will make a wonderful jam. Now I'm at the boiling temperature, and for here it's holding around 210 degrees, and it's going to stay there for a while. And when it starts going above, that means you evaporated most of the water out, and that's when you have to really pay close attention to where that temperature is going to go. If you find that your fruit, in this case the blueberries, wants to foam a lot, what you do is just take a dab of butter and put in there, and that will knock all the foaming away. We don't need to add it to the blueberries. You have to keep stirring the whole time. It will be splashing a lot of bubbles. My thermometer, I don't think it's dipped in deep enough, so I can't trust the reading. But from old school method, notice the parting the seas there. That's telling me that it is done. So we're going to ignore what the thermometer says, and we can turn the heat off now. Okay, our jars are hot. They just came out of the processor. They're sterile, and the jam is nice and thick. And it will thicken even more as it cools. Now, the stirring, heating process took approximately 50 minutes, so that's a lot of time to be standing there stirring. So the quick way is to use pectin. But the flavor of this is going to be so intense. The pectin method will give you much more jam. But this one, when you share it, you're sharing so much more love. From the 4 quarts of berries, we're going to yield 2.5 quarts of jam. The way it usually goes is I get to keep the partial full one. The other ones are given away. Next we process 2. This one gets eaten. Now when I heat the lids with the rings, I keep them together so that I can pick them up at the same time. Now I'm using this funnel. I kept the top of the jars clean. If you slop a little bit on there, what you want to do is take a wet paper towel and wipe that off. And just bring a little tension on that lid. Put it in the processor. And we want to submerge this and boil it for 10 minutes. And the excess water, this is already hot, I can dump that in there. I will have to add more to get it covered. I expected to produce a little bit more. I expected at least 4 jars. So old school method gives you a lot less liquid in your jam. Now the processing method, you can see that I have these submerged, and we bring this up to a boil. When it's at a boil temperature, the temperature inside the jars will be at the boiling temperature also. And minimum 5 minutes, I go 10 minutes. And then the processing is done. The lids will seal and good for a year or 2 or longer. But the way this is tasting, I don't think it'll make it very long. Behind me on the stove I have the jars processing. We need 10 minutes of processing time, and those are completed. In the meantime, this has already cooled down, still warm. Look at the consistency of this. Old school blueberry jam. Wow, that is really intense flavor. I like the little crunch of the seeds that's in here. It'll be real easy to eat this jar. Look at that. Blueberry jam, very simple recipe. 2 ingredients: blueberries, sugar. 3rd ingredient would be thyme. You can shorten this recipe, shorten your cook time by almost an hour by using fruit pectin. You won't get this type of a consistency, but it'll yield probably twice the volume, and it'll still be very good. Thanks for watching, my friends. Bye-bye.